which means that that piece of donations that was supporting the service is now not gonna be available. Well, that's gonna come from somewhere. It's either gonna come from the fees for the service itself, or it's gonna come from the city coffers. And, you know, maybe you get enough that that investment is worthwhile, and that's your decision, that's not mine. But if we're gonna compare, we need to compare, and we need to look at both services, and we need to look at the pros and cons. And the other thing is, once your status is revoked by the IRS, again, this whole accounting thing is a very precise dance. Once your status has been revoked, you cannot put yourself out there as an organization that can accept charitable contributions. You have to take any mention of that off any of your media, websites, whatever. You can't hold raffles. Those are licensed by the state. You have to have a raffle license. And so it's kind of a pretty big deal. And the only way you get your status back is to go ahead and file a new Form 1023, which is an application for tax exempt status. And that's a pretty not fun and long-term kind of a process. So, and again, in terms of, again, this memo was sort of saying that there's an insolvency problem at New Glarus. At the end of 2024, which would have been known if we went and got the 990s, the cash balance was $184,428. Long-term liabilities of $119,443, which is the load on the ambulance, and short-term liabilities of under $7,000, $6,840. Unrestricted net assets, which is basically, so because nonprofits don't work like for-profit entities, what you end up is with unrestricted net assets. And what that means is I own these things, either cash or equipment, to this value. So the unrestricted net assets were $491,244. And remember I said the cash was $184,000 and change. So that means that along the cash and the depreciated value of all the equipment is just shy of $500,000. And that's a good place to be. It's hardly a weak financial position. I'd say it's a fairly strong financial position. The other problem was, it's a positive net asset. If you have, which was sort of implied in this memo, if you have a string of losses, I've just been losing money over the years, you can literally end up with a negative net assets. New Glarus doesn't have negative net assets. They have a positive net asset of $491,000 and change. The other thing is, one of the comments was there's this trend of losses. They've been losing. Well, I looked at, and again, remember I said this trend is 3 to 5 years looking back, not 10 years looking back. In the last 5 years, their net profit is $34,652. So that kind of swings up and down because you're gonna put money away to buy an ambulance. Then you're gonna use the money to buy the ambulance. So in the time that you buy the ambulance, there's gonna be more depreciation. There's gonna be all the equipment that you're not necessarily gonna capitalize. But overall, if you look back the last 5 years, they're extremely solvent. And so the one that really kind of got me was, there was a comment in there about fundraising having a zero balance and there being fundraising expenses. Well, again, that's a lack of an ability to read the 990 because the kind of fundraising that your service here does is they take donations. They do mail applications, that sort of thing. It goes into donations. The fundraising that he's talking about is your special events. That's a separate category in the 990. So if you do a raffle, or if you do, I have various clients who do various kinds of special events, you report the revenue that you took in from that and then all the expenses. But they don't do fundraising, in the special event fundraising. So not knowing that is kind of a big indication that I'm not real sure what I'm talking about. Chief already talked about the training. That's not my bailiwick. I don't have anything to say about that. There was also a comment that, okay, well so first there's a comment that says, they're losing money constantly, I'm not sure they're gonna be able to continue. And then there's a comment that says, well, they've got all this cash, but they don't have it in an interest-bearing account. So, which is it? We got money or we don't got money? And as far as the interest is concerned, again, being a nonprofit it's a real strict dance. And one of the things that is required is that you be very, very careful with your cash. You're not allowed to make speculative, you have to have a policy that says this is how we handle our cash. You don't do anything, you're supposed to be conservative. I know in the past they've done short-term CDs, and different things that will give a better interest. But the notion that, well, you have your money in savings and that's a problem is not true. It's okay. And again, there were comments on oversight, and they were kind of a hodgepodge all over the place. The way a nonprofit works is it is a private nonprofit. It's directed by a board of directors. It's their responsibility to make sure that management is doing what they're supposed to be doing. And it's their responsibility to set all the policies and procedures and to kind of keep an eye on the whole thing. And in the 990, it has particular categories of who's the board member. There's a complaint of like nobody's listed as president on this one really old one or whatever. But it's the board members, how they work internally in terms of who's an officer is somewhat irrelevant. This is your board, that's what you need to know. Are they paid? If so, how much? What kind of time do they put in? Your executive director is really the only paid board member. And that salary is disclosed, that's on there. And okay, so another one on this oversight one that I kind of got a kick out of was the idea that you should only have 5% of your expenses in an other category. Well, again, going back to the 990, one of the things that we'll notice is that the 990s, or nonprofits, is one of the largest economic sectors. And there is one form that every single 990, except churches, because they don't do 990s, in the country submits. And it's a one form fits all. So there's all kinds of, and it's been revamped several times, but it's based on an old paper form. And there are several places, I have performing arts organizations that have 50% of their expenses in other, because studio time is not on the checkoff list on the 990. Printing is, but nowadays people spend well under $1,000 on printing. So that's a specified category in the 990, but otherwise it would be another.
So I'm curious, because you said that the gentleman contacted you.
Mm-mm.
Did you talk to him?
Oh, no, I can't.
But I thought that, like, I guess where I'm landing is the village is saying that they've asked for information from the EMS and the EMS has not provided it.
Well, that's,
And
to
so
my
my
knowledge,
question is,
that's not so. They
did
provided it.
the EMS give permission to you to talk
He didn't ask
to them about
He asked me.
anything?
No, they gave me permission to talk about this memo.
And so this is where I'm stuck though, because talking about the memo is fine, but there doesn't seem to be communication between the EMS and the village. Like the village is saying, we've asked for this
Yeah.
information, and EMS is saying,
To my knowledge, because we've sent it out
given this
several
information,
times.
and there's not an alignment, so I don't understand why there's no alignment.
Okay, well, I can't speak to that because I don't talk to the village at all. But to my understanding, we've provided several reports when we've been asked, and they've gone out. This gentleman contacted me without nothing, with no, yeah, they said you could, yeah, they told, no, he just kind of showed up out of the blue and said, I want all this information, which I literally cannot do. I can't talk to him. He's not my client, they are. I can talk to people based on what they tell me they want me to share.
Did the EMS tell you that you could share anything with them?
We sent it all via them and they sent, this is the only thing that I'm sharing right now. We did prepare something for your steering committee and one other meeting that you had. But by and large, it all flowed through you guys, and to my knowledge, you sent it along.
Just rejected.
So my other question, because it's 45 minutes in and I have a 5-year-old who needs to go to bed soon. So I know that your plan, your goal here is to defer the decision, defer the change until January 1st of 2027. But my understanding is the contract's signed. So how are you going to accomplish that? Like, what do you want to do? What do you want us to do? What are you trying to motivate here?
I'll speak to that.
A contract can be written. A contract can be written and a contract can be revoked. And if you feel like we do, that this has been a rash decision that has not had, and I'm sorry, you're jumping ahead now, you have to leave.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And I will tell you because you have to leave, but the point of this, and I'll come back to this at the end of the meeting, is there has not been a study completed. There have not been audits conducted. There has been no meaningful data collected. If the Southwest Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission can demonstrate in any way, shape, or form that they have done their due diligence and provided a platform or a reason why New Glarus area EMS should cease to exist, please, please share it with all of us. This has all taken place behind closed doors with a small group of people who want to see New Glarus area EMS go away. It's a small group of people. If any of you in this room believe otherwise, please say so. Please say to our elected officials, we need you to reconsider. Tamp the brakes. Why does this have to take place in January of 26? If it's such a good idea, if it's the right decision, let's enact it in January of 27, and we'll come back to that. But there's important information needs to be shared. I'm sorry you have to leave early, but we're not going to rearrange the whole schedule for that.
Sure, and that's
Thank
fine.
you.
I'm just, how long do you guys expect this to last? 15 more minutes? 2 more hours?
I can actually speak to that too. So the Southwest Regional Planning Commission that was authorized to do this study actually asked for 40 different data points from DHS, Sheriff's Office, as this is going down. Only 5 of those points actually came from New Glarus EMS. So at the time of the decision that the village made the decision to sign the contract with Belleville, they had basically 5 or 6 data points out of 40 to go off of. So New Glarus gave them basically, I even have the file of what they received from New Glarus versus what was asked of the Sheriff's Department, what was asked of DHS. And most of those points, most of those items were either appended, like requested, never received from DHS, never received from the Sheriff's Department, or an analysis was in progress. This happened right before the village made their decision. So they never had, as Lisa mentioned, they never had a final study, much of which Catherine was talking about was a preliminary report that came out that was basically 2 pages. That's what the village made their decision off of. So if I can, real quick, just to introduce myself again. So I'm Alan DeYoung, Executive Director, Wisconsin EMS Association. We are a nonprofit ourselves. We're a trade association that represents about 350 EMS agencies throughout the state and about 6,000 EMS professionals. Our members include New Glarus EMS, Belleville EMS, and actually most of the EMS agencies within this region and actually all over the state. So we exist basically just support EMS and help communities make the right decision for their needs. Obviously, everywhere is unique, but I wanted to make that clear in terms of who we represent as well. So with that, municipalities can decide however they want in terms of their EMS coverage. This is home rule. They have that authority to sign the contract with Belleville. They also have the authority, as long as Village of Belleville also agrees, to get rid of that contract. That would be the way out of this. Again, I'm not here to say whether the village made a right decision, a wrong decision. That's not my decision to even make or to present on. Obviously, any decision, especially one involving EMS, needs planning. So I actually plan to just talk about the timeline, because this, to me, happened fairly quickly overall. So I have that in front of me. So starting in February of this year, the village board applied for an innovation planning grant. What that is basically grant money from the state to do studies on consolidation. Anything, not just EMS, could be fire, could be police, could be public works, it could be anything. This is basically free money to do studies. So the village applied for and was awarded $75,000 to, quote, this is in their application, identify a new service model that results in a lower per resident expense. This was their intended goal of the feasibility study. The Southwest Regional Planning Commission was chosen as the consultant for this study, and then about May, the village board formally created an EMS steering committee. That steering committee met a couple of times from July, August, and September. In addition to having regular board meetings, of course, both the EMS steering committee and the village board both went into closed session almost every single time that they talked about EMS. That's, to me, a little bit odd. And one of those in the meeting minutes, the board took action in closed session. This, to me, is a red flag, because any decisions now should be made in open session. So you know who voted, how they voted, in whatever way. So obviously the vote to sign the contract was made in open session, but there was some action, I don't know what it is, it was not recorded, that the board took action in closed session on September 3rd. Additionally,
Can I ask a quick question? Was the township board ever consulted or had any say?
I believe the town was in attendance in one of the board meetings.
Well, just the township of New Glarus, not the other townships, not yours,
Correct.
not
Yeah.
Primrose, not Perry.
Yep, and the board, also the village board had a special meeting again, September 22nd, again, going into closed session, saying no action was taken. Then on September 30th, the EMS steering committee met. This is where they received this 2-page preliminary report and the list of outstanding data requests, which I can, again, even probably put up there for you, of what at that time they actually had received in terms of the Regional Planning Commission had received in terms of data, but there was no final report, just this preliminary report. They go into closed session. Again, they recorded no committee action was taken. Then the following October 1st, this is where they go again into closed session regarding the EMS contract. They return to open session, and then they vote 7-0 to approve the 2026 contract with Belleville Area EMS because, quote, of concerns about New Glarus EMS's long-term viability. That's all that was stated in the board meeting minutes. Then on, of course, the 2nd, that's when they issued their public statement and press framing the Belleville agreement and 24/7 coverage starting in 2026. I know one of the other pieces that has been not talked about here, but at least the village board has stated that there is a innovation grant or a state funding that maybe you've heard up to $10 million. What this is anytime a municipality decides to transfer service, again, anything, public works, police, fire, EMS, doesn't matter. If they transfer service and they meet certain requirements, they can get a percentage of what they paid back as a grant over the next 5 years, every single year. So this is one of the things they touted, that they should, by doing this, they should have access to this innovation grant. However, I've confirmed, based on the executed contract and speaking with the Department of Revenue, the village of New Glarus is not eligible, neither is the town of New Glarus. They're not eligible for any state funding. So if that's used as a, I guess, a reasoning to offset the cost from going from $21 per capita to $70 per capita, that is not an allowable, I would say, like, reasoning, because they are not eligible.
Why are the township and village not eligible?
So the Department of Revenue has specific requirements. This innovation grant came out in 2023. It was $300 million, okay, available to municipalities that transfer service. Originally, the plan was, we want you to transfer service and save taxpayer money. You have to save 10%. Well, nobody was gonna do that, so they changed it and said, look, now you don't have to save money, but you can only spend 115% of what you spent before. So, do some simple math here. Village of New Glarus spends roughly $49,000, $50,000 a year for New Glarus EMS service. By going to Belleville, it's $70 per capita, it's $168,000. That's well over 115%. So that is one of the requirements. In addition to that, they have to sign a 3-year agreement. The agreement with Belleville EMS is 1 year. So making this change does not provide the village or the town any state funding. And that's the 2 main reasons they're ineligible. Even if they decide to join the Belleville EMS district, that's the same entity that they're already contracted with, and it's from the initial point from this year that they make that determination of how much money did you stay within that cap. So I don't want to say that's not a reasoning in itself, just for state money, because they're not eligible. Yes.
As part of their planning, did they do projections on the growth of Belleville and New Glarus, and what the EMS needs were going to be? 'Cause, I mean, my understanding is we've got 2 subdivisions now, of up to 400 houses in the next few years, just in New Glarus.
To be honest, I'm not sure offhand, but if there was any, one of the biggest things with any net new construction is they can levy additional taxes based on net new construction. So if there was more funding needed, they would have been, or would be able to take advantage of that for funding for whatever EMS they contract with. But officially, they do have that authority as your village board and town board.
Would it be normal when an entity is conglomerating that they would include that kind of analysis in order to make the decision and how much money they were going to need over time as the 2 very large communities grow?
Typically, yes. Like I said, most of these things are planned out. I mean, I talk with departments, both directors and chiefs, as well as city administrators, county administrators, mayors, all across the state. There is a push for consolidation. It does make sense. We're not against it at all. There are certainly plenty of communities that long-term sustainability, there's certain thresholds on call volumes that you need in order to be a career department or even a part-time department or some type of combination. There are certain thresholds that are needed. So as volunteers are going away from EMS, people want to get paid for what they do. They don't have that freedom, the time, the money to volunteer it like they used to do decades ago. And volunteerism literally has subsidized the taxpayers, all of us, throughout the whole state. So this move is happening everywhere to not only consolidate, but move to a paid model. And it's tough in terms of everybody's role because cities, towns, villages can't levy past a certain limit. So if they need the money to move to a full-time model, they may not have that available to them. That's why you typically see like referendums and things like that. Other questions? Yeah.
So what I'm getting out of this is that there's members of the New Glarus Town Board and the Village Board that sought out information that they weren't allowed to get unless the EMS Association gave them that information, and that was never asked for completely and properly. Is that part of it?
That's not necessarily true. The study, and I'll speak to this as the steering committee member on behalf of New Glarus area EMS, and I'll show you, we were very transparent with, I'm going the wrong way, I'm sorry. We did provide our profit and loss statement, and you'll see that our run revenue, and you probably can't see those numbers, I'm sorry, they're very small, but there are several revenue streams that support EMS. Here in New Glarus, run revenue, the number of EMS calls we get, we charge for those trips to the hospital, right? We also have, each of the municipalities pays a fee, and as Alan pointed out, in the village of New Glarus, it was $49,000. Without discussing with us if they might up that fee, they're willing to give Belleville $164,000.
Yeah.
Which was like baffling. I missed one meeting and I just about fell out of my chair when I saw on Facebook that we're being replaced and for $164,000 as opposed to this 3-year contract for $49,000. What's more, there was no consideration given to those townships that we also serve. You were never privy to those discussions.
That's what I'm worried about, was we weren't drug into it at all.
Exactly, New Glarus EMS was not privy to those discussions either. They were very closed discussions And I have to believe, just based on what we've gleaned without being privy to those discussions, that there was a sincere belief that this $10 million, and I would encourage each and every one of you to write this down, if you have a pen in your hand, you go to the Village of Belleville's website and you look up their meeting agendas. You go to October 6th and you click on the video of that meeting. That's, if you want to talk about the horse getting before the cart getting before the horse, our village administrator went to that village board to tell them that she was merging the Belleville EMS with New Glarus Fire. And you will hear at 14 minutes a village trustee go, why did I learn about this on Facebook? Is this fun?
Well, that's what I'm saying. This is typically about a 5-year plan to put this out.
That's what we're
To accumulate
saying.
all the data that you need to really look at it in a deep dive. And this is turning over in months.
Exactly, and
And
Troy
we're out hanging
Maggie,
at the edges, wondering if
Troy
we're gonna
Maggie
have
from
the meat
Southwest
wagon come out or
Wisconsin.
not.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
That's okay.
Troy Maggie from Southwest Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission has been on the village's payroll for some time. He was awarded $75,500, this grant, I'm sorry, he gets to walk away with $65,000 to conduct a study to see if this is feasible. He hasn't done anything except accuse the New Glarus area EMS of fiscal insolvency. He brought that to the third meeting, and this is what Catherine was refuting, and I'm sorry that people were getting, tired with, but this is important information, people. You need to understand, we are not insolvent. Troy Maggie leveled an opinion that was false, which is why we are here tonight. There is a great deal of misinformation that's being acted upon. And if it is acted upon in the fashion that the village and the town have seen fit to do by signing this contract, you won't have an EMS in New Glarus. You will be beholden to the village of Belleville and the Belleville-Montrose-Exeter Fire District. And what's gonna happen to you, and I apologize, these are gonna be hard to see, but please know, this information was shared with Lauren Freeman, the previous administrator. She saw our profit and loss statement. We provided to her what she asked for. And we got a loan. We bought a new ambulance. We have 2 ambulances under 40,000 miles. Ask Belleville what they're driving.
Paid for.
Well, one's paid for. This one we owe 2022 on, but just mindful. There's a rumor going around town, again, so much misinformation. There are people saying, did you hear the EMS hasn't paid on their ambulance? Well, baloney. We started out at $230,000, so I think we've been making some payments, right? That's what you do when you take out a loan. And let me tell you, the Bank of New Glarus is a little bit touchy about that accusation too. Because do you think that the Bank of New Glarus hands out candy for free? No, it's a very rigorous process to get a loan. The New Glarus area EMS was not given a $230,000 loan to purchase a fantastic piece of equipment. It came with a power load, a power cot. It was ready to run. Belleville's gonna be spending double that to get what they're getting in July of 2025. Excuse me, 2026.
The biggest thing is ambulances right now is, to get an ambulance is about 3 years. So you need to order it now if you plan to have one 3 years later. And typically, this is varies based on service, you're gonna replace an ambulance every 5 years.
You wanna
because of the mileage, yeah.
talk about fiscal responsibility. Catherine Joy has taken good care of us. She's filed our 990s religiously. There is not going to be a problem if we have an audit. We have welcomed that. We have welcomed an audit. We provided the information from our accountant when it was asked for. Yes, we approved that. She was not able to make the meeting, but agreed to be on the telephone to answer any questions. Do you know what happened at that meeting? She was denied the opportunity to speak to the closed session that was taking place. She was denied the opportunity to defend the accusations that were presented at that meeting. And that group of people the next day reassembled, as Alan pointed out, and they voted. They voted to sign a contract with Belleville Area EMS based on the misinformation that Mr. Troy Maggie shared with them.
So there, if I sound a little bitter, I am. This was a complete blindside because this is a memo dated March 25th. March 25th, if you can see that, from our village administrator prior to Kelsey, Lauren Freeman, who got this ball rolling. To be clear, I am not trying to dissolve your department. The grant we just received will help us study potential solutions to avoid getting into a future financial situation that the village cannot handle. I agree the current EMS contract is pretty affordable, but there is no guarantee that will continue to be the case in the future, especially hearing from other municipalities who have seen significant price hikes. A large price increase would jeopardize the village's ability to provide other critical services. What the heck did we just do? We went from $49,000 for a 3-year contract guaranteed to let's give Belleville $164,000 in year 1, and that's for 1 ambulance staffed 24 hours a day. You have that now. You have that. And Belleville's gonna have the other one sitting in Belleville, fully staffed, but it's gonna be 8, 9, 10 minutes away. And they're buying a new one. Who's gonna pay for that? Not the state of Wisconsin, like they're gonna tell you, I'm sorry, you got your pens out a while ago. This is important. You go and watch that video. Watch the Belleville Village Board's video. Kelsey's making promises she's not gonna be able to keep. The village of Belleville is not gonna want her to keep those. The village of Belleville is growing faster than New Glarus. You can look it up on Google. Their growth is far greater than New Glarus's. Are we gonna grow? Yes, we are. And does the New Glarus area EMS not understand that? Do you think we don't see it? Of course we see it. Of course we're planning for it. Do you think that all we do is drive an ambulance? There are plans being made to be accused on the village's website that we have no plans in place, we're not fiscally solvent, and when you call 911, you should get an ambulance with a qualified crew? What the heck was that? That was highly insulting, I'm sorry. We all train, we all are licensed to the same degree that anybody in the state of Wisconsin is. It's highly regulated. Anyway, I'm carrying on, but the point of this is, it was a blindside because the village told us they didn't want to dissolve us, but here we are. And I want to point to this too, because the day after that October 6th meeting, you got the village of Belleville saying, whereas the village and town of New Glarus have expressed the interest in a long-term partnership and exploring creating a new combined EMS district. This may be a very good thing, folks. It may be. We're not saying it's not. But it sure isn't a good idea to implement on January 26th if you thought you were getting $10 million, because you're not. The state of Wisconsin is not going to underwrite this. You're gonna be paying $150 per capita another year. Don't kid yourself. Okay?
That helps.
I just have, like, I'm just giving a scenario. So, someone falls at the New Glarus home, okay? Ambulance, Belleville ambulance goes to that call, right? Somebody has a heart attack at Culver, 5 minutes later, you're waiting for either Belleville, or if they're all gone, we're waiting for Monroe. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So, what's your chances of survival when you have to wait forever for an ambulance?
I'd like to
Right
point
here.
out, and Kay, you know this, 6 times in the month of October, 6 times, 2 people called in New Glarus at the same time. 6 times. New Glarus area EMS met those calls all 6 times. It's gonna be remarkably harder when you got 1 in Belleville and 1 here. And Belleville's not gonna be happy that they got 1 sitting here too. And I know that there's plans to grow, and we all have to be thinking that way. But let's all think together. This action to destroy New Glarus area EMS so this can be advanced, here's what's gonna happen, folks. I just am sharing this slide because I talked with the village administrator in Marshall. He entered into a deal with Sun Prairie 3 years ago. Sun Prairie came into their EMS station, brought 2 ambulances in there, and they were running calls for Marshall. 3 years that contract's up. Guess what happened? Sun Prairie said, we outgrew you, we can't do it anymore, we're out. Either you're gonna pay us $1 million now, or you man up and do it yourself. Well, it's gonna be $2 million to replace what you lost, right? Because they can't just buy 2 ambulances and outfit it with a crew. So this is what the administrator in Marshall is doing. He's paying $300,000 now for what he had for a lot less before. For 336 calls a year, Look at it, 336 calls in Marshall a year, 300,000. We have over 500 in New Glarus a year, 500. Multiply that, and you're paying $500,000 if you bring in a private service. So if that's what Lauren Freeman was afraid of, she's bringing it on. She's not avoiding it, she's bringing it on, isn't she? So you folks ask, what can you do? You better be calling the village board and the town board and saying, what the heck? Null and void that contract. Do the research, finish up what you started with that frickin' $75,000 grant. Make it a thorough study. Make sure that what you're doing, if you decide to pull the pin on New Glarus area EMS, because once it's gone, you better be dang sure that was a good decision. Because it ain't coming back once it's gone.
So Lisa,
Yes.
the one that they're 24/7ing for us, does that cover us and Belleville?
No. They are dedicating an ambulance to New Glarus.
Okay.
And again, I'm
But it'll
not
be
gonna
in Belleville.
discredit Belleville EMS is a great service.
But it'll be in Belleville, or will it be here?
They will have, right now they have 2 ambulances,
Okay.
right? They bought a 3rd one.
Okay.
It's not yet got its graphics, it's not got its outfit, and honestly, I shouldn't be talking about this because we don't know anything. We have not been privy to any of the discussions, but what we have seen is there will be a dedicated ambulance with 24/7. The people will be at the fire station with the ambulance, ready to roll as soon as the pager goes off.
In Belleville?
In New Glarus, it's
Oh, in
gonna
New
be
Glarus.
at our fire station.
Okay.
It's not gonna live in the New Glarus EMS, it's gonna
Okay.
live at the fire station.
Okay.
And it will be manned, possibly by New Glarus Fire, I don't know, possibly by Belleville EMS, we don't know.
So that staff is only gonna respond to the village and the township of New Glarus.
You'll have one dedicated to New Glarus.
What happens in the further reaches, in the York and the Primrose and the Perrys? We gotta
That's why we're
respond.
asking the brakes to be tapped, because
Yeah.
we've got a contract signed with you,
I
don't
know
we?
you
We
do.
have an obligation. If we have to dissolve in the coming year, know that we will liquidate and your contract will be bought out. But in the meantime, you have to find a service provider, don't you?
Yes.
So that's why we're saying,
And people
in
aren't
all
gonna-
fairness, we must ask for these contracts to be voided so that this can be completely thought through, because it has not been completely thought through. There's a small cluster of people that thought this was a brilliant idea, that we're banking on $10 million renewable for 4 years, and it ain't happening. I'm sorry, the fact,
Repeat again the date of that meeting in Belleville.
if you go to the Village of Belleville website and look up meetings and agendas, October 6th is when that meeting took place, where the Village of New Glarus shared with the Village of Belleville that they were going to be entering into this agreement.
Thank you.
You're surprised.
Excuse me, do we know how much it's gonna cost the village of New Glarus to park that Belleville ambulance in the, firehouse?
We've asked questions, but the transparency is not swinging both ways.
I asked, but I couldn't get a response.
Oh, you asked too?
I did. I asked quite a few things, and you know what I got for a response? A cease and desist letter from the village attorney.
Ooh.
Hi, my name's Grace McLaughlin. I have a PhD in epidemiology. I have enough statistics background that I qualify for about 2nd or 3rd level federal positions in statistics. I also trained as an EMT back in the 80s, mostly for wilderness stuff. I've taken part as a team member in all sorts of disease studies, contaminant studies, drug studies. To commission a study in February, to ask for information in May, and then to shove an incomplete report, 5 out of 40 data points, down all of our throats in September and October is unconscionable. It is highly unethical. Any report that includes only 5 out of claims to be the be-all and end-all, I won't say the word. It's garbage. And it's a disservice, not just to the people of New Glarus and York and Primrose, where I lived when I first moved here, and when the guy I was renting from at the time, he cut his leg with a chainsaw one day. He called 911. His phone number was a New Glarus exchange. This was back in the 90s. He got told, oh, you live in Belleville's district. We can't take care of you. Well, fortunately now, thanks to Christie, that's not going to happen. It's based on your distance from the station, from the ambulance. The closest one gets to you before you bleed out.
Do the Belleville residents know that their EMS services are gonna be split?
That's what we don't know yet either, and it's concerning to us.
Yeah.
Because if you're a Belleville resident, you should be concerned about that.
This is a disservice to all of them.
They are gonna have a second ambulance, but it won't arrive until July of 26.
Yeah, this is a disservice to everybody that is being currently served by New Glarus area EMS and by the Belleville, Montrose, Exeter EMS. It is based on garbage.
Just to fit in, where does it fit in, like, has the village ever asked the EMS actually for numbers? And
We can fix this. Yes, thank you, Bill.
oh, sorry.
Just use microphone.
Okay, so
Hello.
There you go.
Okay, so has the village ever asked the New Glarus EMS for specific numbers? And when did they ask and when were they given the numbers? And then does the village ever had an open, like you had here, for questioning for the people?
I think that the purpose was to have the steering committee, the EMS steering committee, look at all those things. And as Alan pointed out, they had all of these different data points that they were going to collect. And ideally, those data points would be collected from a third party so that you don't have to be concerned that anybody was skewing the numbers. DHS has been overwhelmed with requests for that kind of information because, as Alan pointed out, with this innovation grant being made available, everybody's scrambling to figure out how they can get a piece of 10 million. We weren't the only ones making those requests. They weren't fulfilling those requests for information. Our chief is able to run out of our database information, but again, the steering committee met twice. The first meeting I went to, I can recall they were trying to state what the purpose of this was. And I was so confused because they wanted to know all this stuff about New Glarus EMS. And I said, well, okay, wouldn't you, I mean, how do you know if you're good, bad, or ugly if you're comparing yourself to yourself? Wouldn't you want to compare us to our contemporaries? How about Broadhead? They have 2 ambulances and 500 calls. How about Belleville? They have 2 ambulances and 400 calls. How about Mineral Point? I mean, we got the same population and the same number of calls and 2 ambulances. Let's compare us to our contemporaries and see how we stack up. Then you got some benchmarking going on. I was all on board with that. Well, we came back to the second meeting, and it was clear that there had been a meeting that took place before the second meeting because everybody came back and said, yeah, no, we don't want to do that. No, we're gonna make you compare you to the national standards. Well, as Chief pointed out, the national standards, we meet and exceed those as well too. This cry that the quality of care in New Glarus is poor is just, it's unfounded. But again, the person collecting $65,000 that was charged with doing just that. I have multiple studies that were conducted by other districts. They're very thorough. One of the things I pointed out was if you want to do a regionalization of emergency management in Greene County, for the love of God, we're all different. Look at Broadhead, they answer to Rock County. They for a long time had their own dispatch system. They're just now using Greene County's dispatch. But they live on the Rock County border. Then you've got Albany too, that's the same thing, and Port Argyle and Blanchardville got caught up in the Lafayette consolidation, and people are taxing them on both sides. They're trying to raise money to run a private entity, and in the meantime, the county is taxing them to run a county-run service on top of theirs. So you've got, oh my goodness, all these people trying to figure out this healthcare crisis, right? And everybody's got the best intentions at heart. And we're not gonna say that we've got volunteers coming out of our ears, are we, Chief? No. Nobody's gonna say that. There are some things that the village and the town are worried about that we're worried about as well. And does a study need to be done? Heck yes, it does. But did this action need to be taken? I don't believe it did. And I'm gonna go back to the lady who left her question, what can we do? What should we do? We're asking that you take action and see. I know, I called a lawyer. I called a lawyer to see what would an injunction cost, because I would like to see if we can just tap the brakes on this. It's too soon. There's too much that has to happen if we want to have quality care here. Again, I'm not saying this isn't the right answer. It may very well be the right answer. But let's just slow down and stop talking behind our hands about it. Let's all talk about it. If it's the right thing, why can't we openly talk about it? So please, let's see if we collectively, if we have a collective voice, can reverse this contract that was signed before Belleville says, and you're left without an EMS at all.
There's a lot of hands.
Yeah, the village, so
The village didn't have open forums, no.
For your guys' financials, and if yes, when did they ask and when did they get it?
Lauren got them in January of 25, and then she left shortly thereafter and was replaced by Kelsey. Now, I don't know if that's what the transition was, if that information got lost in the transfer. But yes, we have tried to share what they asked for. I will also share with you that the village has been very aggressive, and you can see that, you can hear that. The tone of the letter on their village website is indicative. It's very antagonistic. They would like to see us replaced. They don't want to work with us, given the nature of the discussion or the lack thereof that we've had. I would also like to point out to this group assembled tonight that we, to this day, have not received a written, formal letter stating that either the village or the town of New Glarus has transferred their contract to Belleville. They haven't ended their contract with us. There was no written agreement, no written letter stating that. We read about it on Facebook, we heard it on TV.
So if you're one of the 5 districts, not the village.
Can we hand around the mic so everyone can hear everything? There's a lot more questions in the audience.
So if you're one of the 5 districts, townships, not the village or the town of New Glarus, and our, the New Glarus EMS ends January 1, 2026, we're left kind of in a lurch. Is that correct?
Well, you're left in a position where Belleville will offer you that service, but they're gonna charge you $70 per capita, like everybody else.
So guys, let me answer that. So the 5 townships that signed contracts with us, I have been in contact with the townships. I don't need that, trust me.
Help people who are hard of hearing and pass it around.
We are going to honor those contracts as long as we can. The sustainability that we have with the money that you saw on there, we will keep paying our bills, keep moving forward, and we will take care of you guys as long as we humanly possibly can. We're hoping that we can stretch the finances out for the next year to sustain the service for that year. But will it be hard? Yeah, it will. Because we're going to be going from over 500 calls down to probably 100. That's huge difference for us. So we're looking at different ways to sustain ourselves so that if this falls apart, if contract sticks, this falls apart, we are still here for you. If that makes sense.
I have a question. In any situation like this, where there's a sudden decision made, one has to ask cui bono. It's Latin for who benefits. And I'm just wondering who on the village board benefits from this situation? Let's say possibly personally. And I think everybody has to look around and wonder that. Thank you.
I think that anything that took 50 years to build, you don't want to destroy it without letting the public at least have a vote on it. Spring election's coming up. If we got time to think about this, and I think everybody should talk to the village fathers and say no. A referendum has to be done. They can't make that decision without. And I think you should just haunt them until they decide to break that contract.
According to Troy Maggie, again from Southwest, he stated that the steering committee was going to be concluding its study in March of 26. So it would seem that that would be a time when there could be a forum and discussion and determination as to what's going to be the best course of action.
So we're actually Exeter Township, and we haven't heard anything. We saw it on Facebook also, so we never heard anything about a meeting, anything like that. And although it's hearsay, when I was at the town board meeting, last Tuesday, whoever that, I don't pay attention, town, okay. Gentleman was asking about the EMS. And what the board person said, which was interesting, was that some portion of this this huge raise of money, both the captain and the second in command in Belleville are going to get substantial raises. So I found that very interesting. Yes, it's hearsay and I don't see anything writing, but that is what he said.
Mm-hmm.
I guess Bill, a member of our board, is asking about dissolution, if that would become an option. It's important, I think, for everybody to know that we wouldn't be turning our assets over to, we're a 501c3, right? And by virtue of that, the assets would have to go to another 501c3. So upon dissolution, we'd be gifting that to another 501c3 nonprofit.
I'm just curious if there are plans for a meeting similar to this where all parties are representatives. Like, we have a lot of questions, still lots of people here have questions. I feel like, would there be another meeting where the village board would be here?
Again, I think as constituents, we need to go to our elected representatives and demand that. That was not something they were offering, no. That's why we, New Glarus Area EMS, sent out that invitation to you. If you received a postcard in the mail, it came from us. Because we felt that it was misleading. The way this was presented, it was presented as if it's neighbors helping neighbors. It's neighbors helping themselves to your tax dollars, certainly. Going from $21 to $70 per capita is a significant change. And I just want to reiterate one more time, we all need to talk about this. It could be a good idea. There could be merit in our two communities combining and working to make this happen. But we really, really, really need to have some data points, don't we? And I think Troy Maggie prides himself in being this regional planning, person. Why was there no demographics? We don't even have that much. There was no comparison of Belleville's population base and their number of people on Medicaid, Medicare as compared to those with insurance. There was no comparison of the two villages, none.
I got a comment.
Oh, Catherine.
So bottom line is, if, as Chief is saying, this Troy guy is gonna finish his study in March of 26, you're pooched, because that is piece of crap. It's
12.5% of the data that he apparently said needed to be in there.
as Grace would say, it's garbage.
Not statistically
I
significant.
actually want to speak to that a little bit further. So I want to reiterate, the data points that they presented in that preliminary report was just those couple at the time that they made the decision. So that's strictly it. They probably have all those data points, or majority of them now. They should, I would hope by now, have gotten answers from DHS and from the Sheriff's Office and have analyzed that data. So I want to reiterate that this very well could be a good decision overall. Again, we don't know until it's been processed and looked through. That's the typical way to do it, is you do your study. You could view many studies out there done by Wisconsin Policy Forum, by Strategic Management Consulting. It's done EMS feasibility studies all across the state. This is very common practice. Sometimes nothing comes out of these studies. Sometimes a merger comes out of these studies, or consolidation. So again, it's more so this could be the right answer without knowing more in terms of the details. I don't think that residents were really informed. But more so, I guess I would have a concern with just the process they went about this. Again, it could be the right decision, but the process that they went about was a lot of closed sessions. It's public safety. It's something that all residents should have some type of voice or opinion on. And then of course the deliverables, not having a full-blown study done when you're making a decision such as this. That's, at least personally to me, I find issue with that. But again, Belleville can be very well equipped in terms of staffing and people to cover this. They do have a lot of people. That is one of their, I guess, benefits too. They have a significant staff overall. But it's really just making sure that it's done properly.
It's like approving a drug based on your first animal study. Or on, hey, this compound kills bacteria on an agar plate. Or it kills viruses.
Could I say something too with this? The contract has already been signed by both parties. The only way to nullify it is having both parties, meaning the Village of New Glarus and the Village of Belleville, or really the district that they created, because the contract is for contracting service from the district. Okay, that's how this has all come about. So it's not like they're merging into the district, becoming part of the district. They are contracting with the district to provide EMS coverage. That's, very similar to contracting with a private nonprofit or a private for-profit in terms of it's another entity that's providing it that you don't have ownership over. You don't have, in this case, say over necessarily in terms of internal operations. You are just paying for your service that you are receiving. Belleville is the same exact level of service. It's AMT. Both have the ability to flex up to paramedic. What that means is basically having the access to a lot more medications, a lot more drugs. Both services have that. And to provide some additional perspective, so Belleville covers, the whole district covers about 6,000 residents. They see, these are reported calls, so they might vary from calls that she stated, but these are reported calls to DHS. They had 453 calls, so about 7% of the population is calling in a sense. Obviously people call more than once. Versus New Glarus, the coverage area for New Glarus is 4,800, or yeah, 4,846. So basically comparing 6,000 population to 4,000. So New Glarus does have a smaller population overall, EMS, for every area that they cover, but the call volumes are actually higher. So they had reported in 2024, 493 calls. So we're talking about 50 more calls with a smaller population. So there is a greater need in the town of New Glarus and the village of New Glarus in terms of the call volume. So my perspective too, it's interesting when this is honestly the first time I've seen it, where a department that does less calls is taking over the area of a department that does more calls. That I personally have never seen it, doesn't mean it can't happen, but just saying.
I'm curious on the Belleville 6,000 people. how much is that in the village versus out in the outskirts? Because in New Glarus, it's about 2,000 in the village and another 2,000 in, I don't know, what did they say the other day in the ATV meeting, like, it's 6,000 miles of roads or whatever, anyway. There's just a different, if it's more rural, it.
I don't have that data specifically, that would be looking at, so actually, the Regional Planning Commission, actually doing the study, should have all that data from dispatch, from the Sheriff's Department. I mean, honestly, from personally, this is gonna be really hard in terms of if you wanna nullify this contract. It's getting the village board members that represent you, that you voted in, to do so. If that's what you want, that's what you need to do, is talk with them. Obviously, if they decide not to, that is entirely their authority. And I'm not, here to say yay or nay in terms of what they can and can't do. That is within their authority to decide. Obviously, it's within your authority as voters to choose who's gonna represent you on a village board, town board, or otherwise.
So the village can decide if something needs to be voted on from the public or not? Because they didn't let us vote?
Well, yeah, so you voted for them as your representatives. They have full authority as a village board, as a town board, as a city council, have full authority to contract with, to authorize, to decide if they want to do their own municipal EMS. And for everything, we're talking public safety, public works, roads, they make those decisions. That's why you vote them in.
So they make the decision if something goes on the ballot to be voted on?
Not precisely, in terms of if you're wanting to put it to a ballot, it doesn't necessarily, need a referendum per se. You typically do referendums when you go outside like the levy limits. But I'm not familiar with that piece in terms of if you could actually push it to a referendum to challenge it.
I'm just concerned too, because it seemed like the ATV UTV situation, they spent a lot more time on that than the EMS, which is really sad.
Again, I do know that Belleville EMS has met with New Glarus Fire Department. They are talking planning. Truthfully, they don't want to, they want to make sure nobody ever drops calls themselves. They want to make sure they're fully staffed as well, because they are in contract, so they need to uphold that contract, which I know they are preparing to do. So it's not like they signed into this without knowing like, oh gosh, we're gonna have to get more staff. They do have a lot of staff available to them. Yes, they're going to be split, and they don't have a third ambulance when either community, Belleville District, could also, based on roughly 500 calls, that's the typical point where you see a secondary call come out. That's why we have mutual aid agreements. That's why they exist. Every department, every EMS agency in the state will never take pretty much 100% of their calls all the time throughout their existence. They always have mutual aid in place just in case. That's why it exists.
So I understand what you're saying about both parties need to nullify. And we can all talk to our town board and our village board. What can be done to motivate Belleville? Is there anything we can do?
I think that's the hard part. So officially, because this is a contract, if one party wants to cancel, the other one does not. Belleville could seek some type of financial, resolution to it, because they are taking the time, the resources to plan this out, to get enough staff. I mean, I don't know all the details again on that. I know they have been meeting about it. I know they have been preparing for this, because this is going to significantly increase their call volume by a lot. So, I mean, they are taking the necessary steps. Is the time frame small? Yes, I would definitely say it's within, having 3 months to the start of the year is a very, very short time frame. 6 months would be ideal, or not really ideal, but better, and then a year would be ideal, at least. But this is a situation that many areas face. I mean, I can tell you several areas of the state that have been, the rug kind of pulled underneath them, like with a private for-profit that left in one region with 6 different municipalities, and they had 6 months to figure it out. Now, even since then, they started a service, that service closed, and they've re-contracted again with a different partner. So, I mean, if these things do happen, they do change. Consolidation will happen. It's already started. I mean, there's ways to do it, of course, and it's really based on community needs, because every community is different. I can point to several that have 1,000 population that they only call 10 times a year. And their neighbor, who also has 1,000 population, calls 150 times a year. It's based on the health of the population and their needs.
So do we still provide assistance to Monticello? Is Monticello still first response only?
Portions of Monticello, Greene County EMS covers part of that as well. I just wanted to say, folks, our CPA, Catherine Joy, needs to leave. Are there any further questions that you'd like to address to her before she would go? Any questions? Catherine, if you please join me. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sounds like, I don't need the microphone. It sounds like you guys have provided the village and the township of New Glarus the documentation that they were desiring to look over your financials. And New Glarus Village and Township have already made their decision on moving towards Belleville and leaving those of us out in York and Perry and Primrose on the hook, because we've all signed contracts. And we know that New Glarus EMS can't survive just on those 3 townships. Sounds like we got ourselves in a pickle by not getting information on closed meetings with open book laws and minutes being documented in these closed sessions.
Closed sessions are obviously legal, and they don't document anything within the closed sessions. It is typical that any actions taken, they'll happen in the open session. So they went into closed session when they were reviewing the contract with Belleville, and they came back into open session, they voted then, and that was recorded. The only time, again, that I found that was the board took action in closed session was on September 30th official meeting minutes, and I don't know what that action was. That to me is, again, concerning. It may be nothing, but it's just concerning.
So it is legal to take action in closed session, but you have to come back to open session and record what it is that you took action.
There's certain circumstances that you can take action in a closed session. There are certain, don't ask me what all of them are, but there are certain circumstances they can. And they always outline in every meeting agenda what statute they're using to go into closed session. And there's times that you can ask for an official statement of to why they're going into closed session. That is always an option to you as a taxpayer.
So last call for Catherine questions.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yes, please join us in thanking her for coming all the way from Bayfield, Wisconsin.